How to Conquer Yourself and Achieve Anything. Written and published by Spoken Quora. Life isn't a straight path to success. It's a messy struggle against your own habits, doubts, and distractions. This book isn't about overnight miracles. It's about the real, practical steps you can take to master yourself, one hard-won victory at a time, until anything feels possible. Let's get started. Chapter 1. The Battle Within. Understanding Your Inner Obstacles. Picture this. It's 7 a.m., your alarm blares, and you've got a big day ahead, a project deadline, a workout you swore you'd stick to, or maybe just a promise to yourself to finally start the thing you've been dreaming about. You roll over, hit snooze, and in that split second, a familiar voice creeps in. You're not ready. It whispers. What's the point? You'll just mess it up anyway. Before you've even swung your feet out of bed, the fight's already begun, and it's not with your boss, your schedule, or the world out there. It's with you. We've all been there. That moment when your own mind feels like the enemy, throwing up roadblocks faster than you can tear them down. I remember the time I sat staring at a blank page, desperate to write something. Anything, but paralyzed by the thought that it wouldn't be good enough. Hours slipped by, and all I had to show for it was a cold cup of coffee and a gnawing sense of defeat. Sound familiar? That's the battle within, and it's one we fight every single day. So what's going on here? Why do we sabotage ourselves when we know we want more? Let's pull back the curtain on the culprits: self-doubt, fear, and procrastination. These aren't just buzzwords. They're the internal enemies that shape our potential, often without us even realizing it. Self-doubt is like that friend who means well, but always points out the worst-case scenario. It's the voice that says, "You? Start a business? You barely passed high school math." Or, "Why bother applying for that job? Someone else is way more qualified." It's sneaky because it doesn't yell, it murmurs, planting seeds of hesitation that grow into full-blown inaction. Psychologists call this the inner critic, and it's wired into us from years of comparing ourselves to others or replaying past mistakes. I once met a guy named Mark at a coffee shop who told me he'd been sitting on a killer app idea for 3 years. "I just don't think I'm the tech genius type," he said, shrugging. 3 years. That's what self-doubt can steal from you. Then there's fear, the big one. Fear of failure, sure, but also fear of success. Because what if you do make it, and then you can't keep up? Fear's a shapeshifter. For me, it showed up when I thought about telling my family I want to quit my safe job and chase something riskier. My palms got sweaty just imagining their raised eyebrows. Fear loves to dress up as logic, whispering, "Play it safe, stay small, don't rock the boat." It's primal. Our brains are hardwired to avoid danger. But here's the kicker. Most of the dangers we fear today aren't tigers in the bushes. They're just bruised egos or awkward conversations. And yet, they stop us cold. And don't get me started on procrastination. This one's the sneakiest of all because it feels so harmless. "I'll do it tomorrow," you tell yourself, scrolling through your phone instead of tackling that task. I've lost count of how many times I've cleaned my kitchen to avoid something harder, like writing this chapter. Studies show procrastination isn't just laziness. It's often a coping mechanism for anxiety or perfectionism. We put things off because we're scared they won't turn out perfect, so we don't start at all. Meanwhile, time slips away, and with it, our shot at what could have been. These inner obstacles don't just mess with our to-do lists. They shape who we become. They keep us stuck in jobs we hate, relationships we've outgrown, or lives that feel like someone else's. I think of my cousin Lisa, who always wanted to travel, but never did because she convinced herself she'd fail at planning it. Now she's 40, scrolling Instagram, wondering where the years went. That's the real sting of the battle within. It's not just about today. It's about tomorrow too. But here's the good news. Understanding these enemies is the first step to beating them. They're not invincible. Self-doubt quiets down when you talk back to it. Fear shrinks when you stare in the face. Procrastination loses its grip when you take one tiny step forward. This chapter isn't about shaming you for struggling. It's about seeing the struggle for what it is. A universal, messy, human thing. We all fight this battle. The difference lies in who decides to pick up the sword. So, grab a pen, or your phone, whatever's handy, and jot down one thing you've been avoiding. Maybe it's a phone call, a workout, or that wild idea you've buried. Ask yourself, what's the voice in my head saying about it? Is it doubt? Fear? The urge to scroll instead of act? Don't judge it. Just notice it. That's where we start. Because the battle within isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, bruised and all, and claiming the life you're meant for. Chapter 2. Forging the warrior's mindset. Cultivating discipline and resilience. Let's be honest. Some days, getting out of bed feels like climbing a mountain. The world throws curveballs. Deadlines pile up. The kids won't stop yelling. Or maybe your inbox is a war zone, and all you want is to retreat under the covers with a bag of chips. I've been there. One rainy Tuesday, I found myself staring at a stack of bills, a broken coffee maker, and a to-do list that mocked me. My instinct, crawl back into bed. But here's the thing. Life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. That's where the warrior's mindset comes in. A gritty, no-nonsense way of showing up, even when you're bruised and tired. This isn't about turning into some superhero overnight. It's about forging something tougher inside you. Discipline to keep going and resilience to bounce back. Think of it like a blacksmith hammering steel. It takes heat, pressure, and a few good whacks, but what comes out is unbreakable. Let's dive into how you can build that mental toughness and focus, step by human step, to tackle whatever life throws your way. Discipline isn't sexy. It's not a motivational poster with a sunrise and a cheesy quote. It's the quiet choice to do the hard thing when the easy thing feels so much better. Take my friend Jake. He used to hit snooze 5 times every morning, promising himself he'd start running tomorrow. Then one day, he decided enough was enough. He didn't wait for inspiration. Set his shoes by the door, picked a playlist, and told himself, just 5 minutes. That was 2 years ago. Now he's training for a half marathon. The secret? He didn't try to overhaul his life. He started small and stuck with it. Here's how you can do it. Pick one thing you've been dodging. Maybe it's writing that email or skipping the late night Netflix binge. Commit to it for 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes of showing up. Science backs this up. Psychologists call it the micro-habit trick. Your brain hates big changes, but it can handle 5 minutes. Do it again tomorrow. Then the next day. Soon, that muscle of discipline starts flexing on its own. It's not about willpower. It's about consistency, one tiny win at a time. If discipline gets you moving, resilience keeps you from quitting when life punches you in the gut. And it will, trust me. I'll never forget the day I got laid off from a job I thought was my big break. I spent the first hour crying in my car, the next hour eating ice cream straight from the tub. But then I remembered something my mom used to say, you don't have to like the mess, but you can't stay in it. Resilience isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, even when your knees are scraped and your pride's in tatters. Want to build it? Start by reframing the hits. Next time something goes wrong, your pitch gets rejected, your car breaks down, pause and ask, what's one thing I can do about this? Not 10 things, not the perfect fix, just one. When I lost that job, my one thing was updating my resume. It wasn't a cure, but it was a step. Studies show this shift. Focusing on what you can control rewires your brain to handle stress better. You're not a victim. You're a warrior picking up the pieces. A warrior without focus is just swinging wildly. Life's full of noise, phone pings, endless news, that coworker who won't stop talking about their cat. I once tried writing an article while my toddler banged pots together and my phone buzzed with group chat nonsense. Spoiler, I got nowhere. Focus isn't magic. It's a skill you hone. Try this. Set a timer for 25 minutes, It's called the Pomodoro technique if you're fancy. And work on one thing. No multitasking, no scrolling, just you and the task. When the timer dings, take a break. I started doing this, and it's like putting blinders on a horse. Suddenly, the finish line's all I see. Here's the real talk. Building this mindset isn't a straight line. Some days, you'll crush it, discipline on point, resilience kicking in, focus laser sharp. Other days, you'll trip over your own feet. I still have mornings where the snooze button wins. And that's okay. The warrior's mindset isn't about being flawless. It's about showing up anyway. Think of Sarah, a single mom I know who works 2 jobs and still finds time to study for her degree. She's not perfect. She's exhausted half the time, but she keeps going. That's the human touch. Messy, stubborn, beautiful grit. So, try this today. Pick your 5-minute discipline move. Write it down. Maybe it's lace up my shoes or open that document. Then, when the inevitable hiccup hits, a late bus, a rude email, find your one thing to keep moving. You're not just building a mindset. You're forging a version of yourself that doesn't back down. Life's a battlefield, sure, but you've got the tools to fight and win. Chapter 3. The Art of Self-Mastery. Taming Your Habits and Emotions. Let me tell you about the night I ate an entire pizza. It wasn't even good pizza, just greasy, regret-flavored cardboard I ordered because I was stressed out of my mind after a fight with my sister. I knew I'd feel worse after, but there I was 3 slices in, chasing some kind of comfort that never came. Sound familiar? We've all got those moments where habits or emotions take the wheel, and suddenly we're not driving anymore. We're just along for the ride. Self-mastery isn't about never slipping. It's about learning how to grab the reins again. This chapter is your guide to taming the wild horses inside you. Those destructive habits that sneak into your routine and the emotions that can either derail you or fuel you, depending on how you handle them. It's not about becoming a robot who never feels or falters. It's about seeing yourself clearly, flaws and all, and turning that messy humanity into strength. Habits are sneaky little things. They start small, a late night scroll here, just one more snack there, and before you know it, they're running your life. I used to check my phone first thing every morning, telling myself I'd just glance at the weather. 30 minutes later, I'd be deep in some random comment thread, grumpy and behind schedule. That's the thing about habits. They don't announce themselves. They creep in, tying you up in knots you don't even notice until you try to move. So how do you break free? Start by shining a light on them. Grab a notebook or your phone, no judgment. And for one day, jot down what you do without thinking. When do you reach for the coffee? The remote? The excuses? Don't beat yourself up. Just watch. My friend Maria did this and realized she was stress eating cookies every afternoon at 3 p.m. sharp. Once she saw it, she could name it. That's step 1, awareness. Step 2 is rewiring. Pick one habit, say my phone obsession, and swap it with something better. I started leaving my phone in the kitchen and grabbing a glass of water instead. It wasn't perfect. Some days I'd still cave. But over weeks, the urge faded. Experts like Charles Duhigg, who wrote The Power of Habit, call this the cue routine reward loop. The cue, waking up, stays, but you change the routine, water, not scrolling, to get a similar reward, feeling awake. It's not magic, it's stubborn repetition, and it works because you're human, not hopeless. Now emotions, they're trickier. They're not quiet like habits, they roar. Anger that makes you snap at your partner, sadness that keeps you in bed, excitement that has you saying yes to too much. I'll never forget the day I cried in a grocery store because I'd lost a big client and saw a sale on my favorite cereal, like the universe was mocking me. Emotions hit hard, and when they do, it's easy to feel like they're the boss of you. But here's the twist, they don't have to be. Emotions are raw energy, and you can learn to channel them. Take anger. I used to let it fester, ruining my day. Then I met a guy named Tom at a workshop who told me he turns his anger into push-ups. 10 reps every time my boss ticks me off, he said, grinning. It sounded nuts, but I tried it. Next time I got mad, I dropped and did 10. Sweaty. Yes. Still furious? Not so much. The trick is catching the feeling early and giving it somewhere to go. Exercise, a journal, a loud sing-along in the car. Sadness is tougher. When my dog passed last year, I didn't want to harness anything. I wanted to wallow. And I did for a bit. But then I started writing letters to him. Silly stuff about how he'd steal my socks. It didn't fix the hurt, but it turned it into something I could hold, not just drown in. Emotions aren't the enemy. They're tools. The art is figuring out how to use them for growth, not just survival. Self-mastery isn't a finish line. Some days, I still eat too much pizza or snap at someone I love. Maria still has her 3 p.m. cookie moments. But we're learning. Think of it like a dance. You step on your own toes sometimes, but you keep moving. Start small. Pick one habit to watch this week. One emotion to redirect. Maybe you swap doom scrolling for a walk. Or turn frustration into a quick sketch. Write down what happens. Did it feel good? Awkward? That's your map. I think of my grandma, who at 70 taught herself to knit after years of saying she couldn't. She'd unravel half her scarves, cursing under her breath, but she kept at it. It's me against me, she'd laugh. That's the heart of it. Self-mastery is you against you. Not to win, but to grow. And every clumsy step, that's the human touch that makes it worth it. Chapter 4. Mapping the quest. Setting goals that ignite your soul. I was 28 when I realized I'd been chasing the wrong map. I had a decent job, a tidy apartment, and a checklist of shoulds. I'd ticked off. Get promoted, save money, look busy. But one night, sitting on my couch with a glass of cheap wine, I felt this ache I couldn't name. I wasn't unhappy exactly, just empty. Like I'd been running a race someone else designed. Ever feel that? Like you're moving, but not toward anything that lights you up? That's when I knew. I needed goals that weren't just boxes to check, but sparks to chase. This chapter is about finding your map, crafting goals that don't just sit on a to-do list, but grab you by the heart and pull you forward. Not the safe, sensible stuff the world tells you to want, but the bold, messy, soul-deep dreams that make you feel alive. Let's figure out how to map that quest together, one human stumble at a time. Goals that ignite you don't come from thin air. They're buried in what you care about most. But here's the catch. We're so busy surviving, we forget to ask ourselves what that is. I used to think I wanted a corner office because that's what success looked like on TV. Then I met a woman named Priya at a friend's barbecue. She'd quit her corporate gig to open a tiny bakery. Not because it was practical, but because kneading dough made her feel like a kid again. It's not about the money, she said, flour on her cheek. It's about waking up excited. So, try this. Grab a coffee, a pen, and 5 minutes. Write down 3 moments in your life when you felt truly alive. Not successful, but alive. Maybe it was hiking with your dog, singing off-key with friends, or fixing something with your hands. Don't overthink it. Just feel it. For me, it was scribbling stories as a kid, losing track of time. Those moments are clues. They're the embers of what sets your soul on fire. Step 2. Dream big, then break it down. Once you've got your embers, fan them into flames. Don't play small. Dream as big as your heart dares. Want to write a novel? Travel the world? Build a cabin with your own hands? Good. That's your quest. But big dreams can freeze you if they stay vague and towering. I wanted to write, but be a writer felt like climbing Everest in flip-flops. So I broke it down. Write 200 words a day. Tiny, doable, real. Here's how. Take your big goal and ask, what's one piece of this I can do this week? If Priya's dream was her bakery, her first step was baking a batch of cookies for friends, not renting a storefront. Small steps don't dim the dream. They light the path. Research shows this works. Psychologists call it chunking. Your brain loves bite-sized wins, and they stack up fast. Step 3. Make it yours, not theirs. The world's loud about what you should want: 6-figure salaries, perfect bodies, a house with a picket fence. But if those don't stir you, they'll just weigh you down. My buddy Alex spent years grinding toward law school because his dad said it was stable. He hated every minute. One day, he ditched it to apprentice with a carpenter. "I'd rather smell sawdust than paper," he told me, grinning. Now he builds furniture, and his soul's in it. Check your goals. Do they feel like yours or someone else's? If you're chasing them to impress your parents, your ex, or Instagram, they'll fizzle. Soul-igniting goals fit you, your quirks, your passions, your weird little joys. If you do it even if no one clapped, that's the one. Step 4. Keep the fire burning. Motivation's tricky. It flares hot, then fades. That's why your map needs fuel. Tie your goal to a why that hits you in the gut. Mine? I write because it's how I make sense of the chaos, and maybe help someone else feel less alone. When I'm tired, that why drags me to the keyboard. Pre is why I was giving people a warm cookie and a smile on a bad day. Alex's was crafting something lasting with his hands. What's yours? Write it down. Stick it where you'll see it. Your mirror, your wallet, anywhere. And when you stumble, because you will, don't ditch the map. I've trashed half-written drafts in frustration, but I keep coming back. Priya burned her first batch of scones. Alex splintered his share of wood. We're human. The quest isn't about perfection. It's about direction. So, here's your move. Pick one ember from your list of alive moments. Dream it big, wild, bold, unapologetic. Then shrink it to one step you can take tomorrow. Want to paint? Buy a brush. Want to run a marathon? Lace up for a block. This isn't a chore. It's a gift to yourself. I think of my grandpa, who at 65 decided he'd learn guitar. He'd strum off key, laughing, but his eyes sparkled. Better late than never, he'd say. That's the human touch. Starting where you stand, chasing what calls you. Your soul's got a quest waiting. Map it out. The world can wait. This one's for you. Chapter 5. Weapons of Willpower. Strengthening your resolve in the face of temptation. I'll let you in on a dirty little secret. I once ate an entire sleeve of Oreos in one sitting. Not because I was hungry, but because they were there, staring at me from the counter after a rough day. I promised myself I'd cut back on sugar, but temptation didn't care. It waltzed in, all smug and chocolatey, and my willpower crumbled faster than those cookies. Ever been there? That moment when your good intentions collide with a distraction, be it a snack, a screen, or a cozy bed, and suddenly you're wondering where your resolve went? Willpower's tricky. It's not some infinite well you dip into. It's more like a muscle. Tough when it's fresh, shaky when it's tired. But here's the good news. You can strengthen it. This chapter's about arming yourself with weapons. Practical, science-backed tricks to stand firm when temptation strikes. Because life's full of Oreo moments, and you deserve to win more of them. First, let's get why this is hard. Researchers like Roy Baumeister have found that willpower is finite. It's a resource that drains as you use it. Think of it like your phone battery. By the end of the day, after resisting a dozen little urges, don't yell at the slow driver. Don't skip the gym. You're running on fumes. That's why I caved to those Oreos at 9 p.m. My tank was empty. Ever notice how you're sane in the morning, but a rebel by night? That's your willpower battery blinking red. But here's the flip side. Like any muscle, it grows stronger with practice. And you don't need to be a monk to make it work. Just a human willing to try. The best way to beat temptation? Don't fight it head on. Sidestep it. I learned this from my cousin Jen, who quit smoking by tossing every lighter in her house. If it's not there, I can't cave, she said. Science calls this pre-commitment, setting yourself up to win before the battle starts. Want to stop scrolling? Leave your phone in another room at night. I started hiding the Oreos in a cabinet I'm too lazy to reach. And guess what? Out of sight, out of mouth. Try it. Pick one temptation and rig the game. Move it. Ditch it. Make it hard to grab. You're not weak. You're strategic. Sometimes temptation hits fast. A coworker's donuts. One more episode trap. When it does, hit pause. Literally. Take 5 slow breaths. Count them. And ask, do I really want this, or am I just tired? I tried this when my friend Mike waved a beer under my nose during a dry week. Those breaths bought me a second to remember why I'd said no. Studies show this works. Pausing short-circuits your brain's autopilot, giving your willpower a fighting chance. It's not foolproof. Mike's beer still taunted me, but it tilts the odds. You can't flex a dead muscle, so keep your willpower fueled. Sleep's a big one. Research says even one bad night slashes your self-control. I've felt it. After a 2 a.m. Netflix binge, I'm a zombie who'll say yes to anything fried. Glucose helps too. Your brain runs on it. Not Oreos, though. A banana or a handful of nuts does the trick. And stress? It's a willpower vampire. When I'm frazzled, I'm defenseless. A quick walk or a dumb dance to my favorite song resets me. Find your recharge. Something small that tops you up. Here's a secret weapon. Celebrate the wins, even the tiny ones. Resisted the donut? Pat yourself on the back. Seriously say, good job, me. I started doing this after skipping late-night snacks, and it's weirdly motivating. Psychologists call it positive reinforcement. It wires your brain to crave the win, not the temptation. My neighbor Sam, who's training for a 5K, high-fives himself in the mirror after every run. Feels dumb, works great, he laughs. He's right. You're not bragging, you're building. Willpower isn't about being iron-willed all the time. I still slip. Last week, I doom scrolled for an hour instead of working. Jen smoked a cigarette or 2 since quitting. We're not perfect. We're people. But every time you wield one of these weapons, dodging the trap, pausing to breathe, recharging, cheering yourself on, you get stronger. Think of my Uncle Ray, who lost 50 pounds by taping "You've Got This" notes around his kitchen. He'd grin and say, some days I believe it, some days I fake it. Either way, I keep going. So, pick your weapon today. Hide that distraction. Take that breath. Grab that apple. Write down one temptation you'll tackle and how you'll fight it. This isn't about never falling. It's about standing up more than you stumble. You've got a warrior in you, and these tools, they're your arsenal. Temptation's got nothing on that. Chapter 6. Allies and Adversaries. Mastering relationships to support your journey. A few years back, I decided to run a 10K, my first ever. I was terrified, out of shape, and pretty sure I collapsed by mile 2. But my friend Lisa didn't blink. I'll train with you, she said, lacing up her sneakers before I could back out. Meanwhile, my old coworker Dave laughed when I told him, "You? Running? Good luck with that." He smirked. Same goal, 2 people, totally different vibes. That's when it hit me. The people around you can make or break your journey. They're either lifting you up or dragging you down, and figuring out who's who is everything. This chapter is about mastering relationships, not just for small talk or holiday cards, but for the big stuff, the dreams you're chasing. We're not lone wolves. We're humans, messy and connected. The right allies can carry you when your legs give out, while adversaries, sometimes without even meaning to, can trip you up. Let's unpack how to spot them, nurture the good ones, and handle the rest, all with a little heart and a lot of honesty. Allies are the ones who get it, who see your spark and fan it. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to care. Lisa didn't run faster than me, thank God, but she showed up, rain, cramps, or my endless whining. She'd say, "One more block, you've got this." And somehow, I believed her. That's what allies do. They're in your corner, not because it's easy, but because they believe in you when you don't. So how do you find them? Look at who's already there. Who texts you, "How to go?" after a big day? Who listens when you ramble about your crazy ideas? My neighbor Kim became an ally when I started writing. She'd read my drafts, coffee in hand, and say, "This is good, keep going." She wasn't a pro. She was just real. You don't need a crowd. 2 or 3 solid allies beat a dozen flaky fans. And if your circle's thin, put yourself out there. A class, a club, a random, "Hey, wanna grab coffee?" Allies don't fall from the sky. You build those bonds one awkward chat at a time. Then there's the flip side. Adversaries. Not cartoon villains twirling mustaches, but people who dim your light, sometimes without even trying. Dave wasn't evil. He just couldn't picture me as a runner, so he dumped his doubt on me. There's also my Aunt Carol, who'd sigh, "Why bother with that writing thing? Get a real job." She meant well, but her words stuck like burrs. Adversaries can be skeptics, naysayers, or just energy vampires who leave you drained. Spotting them's the first step. Ask yourself, after I'm with this person, do I feel fired up or flattened? If it's the latter, they might be holding you back. My friend Sam had a buddy who'd mock his gym goals. "You're not the Rock, dude." Sam started dodging those hangouts, and suddenly his workout stuck. Adversaries don't always mean to hurt you. They're just not on your team. Here's where it gets real. You can't always cut people out. Dave was a coworker. I had to see him daily. Aunt Carol's family. So what do? Set boundaries with a little grace. I'd smile at Dave and say, "Appreciate the input, but I'm doing this." With Carol, I'd pivot. "Thanks for worrying, but I'm excited about it." Firm, not mean. Studies show this works. Psychologists call it assertive detachment. You protect your space without burning bridges. And sometimes, adversaries surprise you. My brother used to roll his eyes at my running plans until he saw me cross that 10K finish line. Now he's my loudest fan. People can shift, give them a chance, but don't wait forever. Your journey's too precious. Your relationships aren't just background noise. They're the scaffolding for your goals. I think of my dad, who at 60 started painting after decades of, "I'm not artsy." His buddy Paul dragged him to an art class, and now Dad's got a wall of canvases. Allies like Paul don't fix your life. They walk with you. Adversaries. They're speed bumps, slow you down, but you can roll over them. So, try this. List 3 people in your orbit. Next to each, write ally or adversary based on how they make you feel about your dreams. For allies, reach out. Say thanks, grab a coffee, keep them close. For adversaries, plan your boundary. Less time, less info, more "I've got this." I still hear Dave's laugh sometimes, but Lisa's voice is louder. That's the human touch. Choosing who gets a front row seat to your story. You're not alone on this quest. Surround yourself with the right crew, and even the steepest climbs get lighter. Who's in your corner? Chapter 7. The Triumph of Small Victories. Building momentum through action. I'll never forget the day I ran my first mile without stopping. It wasn't pretty. My face was red, my lungs burned, and I'm pretty sure I looked like a flailing penguin. But when I hit that mile mark, I threw my fists up like I'd won the Olympics. A year earlier, I couldn't jog to my mailbox without wheezing. That mile? It wasn't just a run. It was proof that little wins stack up. We spend so much time eyeing the big prizes, marathons, dream jobs, perfect lives, that we miss the magic of the small stuff. This chapter is about that magic. How tiny victories, strung together, turn into something massive. Big goals can feel like mountains, daunting, distant, maybe impossible. But here's the secret I've learned the hard way. You don't climb a mountain in one leap. You take one step, then another, and suddenly you're higher than you thought. Small victories aren't flashy, but they're fuel. Let's unpack how to spot them, build them, and let them carry you, human stumbles and all. Ever put off something because it felt too big? I did that with writing. I'd dream of a novel, but freeze at the blank page. Too many words, too much pressure. Then one day I said, "Screw it, just write one sentence." So I did. It was awful. The dog barked at nothing. But it was something. The next day, I wrote 2. A week later, I had a paragraph. Small? Sure. But that first sentence broke the ice, and momentum kicked in. That's the trick. Start so small it's laughable. Want to get fit? Do 1 push-up. Want to save money? Skip 1 coffee. Science backs this. Psychologists call it the Zygarnik effect. Your brain hates unfinished tasks, so even a tiny start pulls you forward. My friend Tara wanted to declutter her house, but was overwhelmed. She started with 1 drawer. Just socks, she said. A month later, her whole bedroom was clear. 1 step snowballs, if you let it. Here's where we trip up. We don't cheer enough. I used to shrug off that mile. It's not a marathon, who cares? Until Lisa, my running buddy, grabbed my arm and yelled, "You did it, you beast!" Her grin made it real. Celebrating isn't bragging, it's fuel. Studies show that marking progress, however small, releases dopamine, that feel-good chemical that keeps you hooked. Ignore the win, and you're starving your momentum. So, make it a thing. Finish a task. Say, "Nice wummy." I started whispering it after writing a page. Sounds silly, feels great. My coworker Juan dances, literally, every time he hits a sales goal, even a small one. Keeps me going. He shrugs, mid-shimmy. Find your vibe. A fist pump, a treat, a text to a friend. Tara lit a candle after each decluttered corner. Small wins deserve noise. Give him some. Spoiler, you won't win every day. I've skipped runs, deleted paragraphs, eaten the damn Oreos again. Momentum's not a straight line. It's a bumpy ride. But here's the human bit. A stumble doesn't erase the stack. After a week of no writing, I'd beat myself up. "You're done, quitter." Then I'd remember that first sentence. 1 bad day doesn't undo 10 good ones. The trick? Get back in with something tiny. Miss a workout? Do a stretch. Blow your budget? Save $1. Small gets you rolling again. I think of my mom, who learned Spanish at 55. She'd fumble verbs, laugh, and say, "1 word today, that's enough." Now she chats with her neighbor Rosa over coffee. She didn't conquer it overnight. She built it, word by word. That's the triumph. Not perfection, but persistence. Momentum's like a snowball, small at first, unstoppable later. Every little victory adds weight. That mile became 2, then 5, then that 10K with Lisa cheering. The sentence became a chapter. Tara's drawer became a house. It's not about speed, it's about motion. I've seen it in my Uncle Pete, who fixed up an old car 1 bolt at a time. Just keep tinkering, he'd say, grease on his hands. A year later, it roared to life. So, here's your move. Pick 1 goal. Any goal. Break it into a step so small it's almost a joke. Run 10 steps, write 10 words, save 10 cents. Do it today. Cheer yourself tomorrow. Stack another the next day. Write it down. Day 1. I did this. Watch it grow. I still grin at that penguin mom memory. Not because it was big, but because it was mine. Your wins don't need to impress anyone else. Just you. Small victories aren't the end game. They're the spark. Light it up and see where it takes you. Chapter 8. Beyond the Summit. Sustaining Success and Redefining Greatness. The day I crossed the finish line of that 10K, I felt invincible. My legs wobbled. My shirt was soaked, but I'd done it. Me, the guy who once panicked walking upstairs. Lisa was there, screaming my name, and for a minute I thought, this is it. I've made it. But a week later, the medals were gathering dust. My sneakers stayed in the closet, and I was back to scrolling on the couch. That high, it faded fast. Reaching the summit's a rush, but staying there, or climbing higher, takes a whole different kind of grit. This chapter's about that. What happens after the win, when the confetti's gone and it's just you again? Success isn't a trophy you polish forever. It's a living thing, fragile and restless. Complacency creeps in like a quiet thief, and if you're not careful, You're coasting on yesterday's victories instead of chasing tomorrow's. But here's the flip side. Greatness isn't static either. It's not one peak. It's a range of horizons, always shifting. Let's figure out how to sustain what you've built, dodge the traps, and keep evolving with all the human mess and magic that comes with it. Winning's hard, but keeping it? That's a sneaky fight. After that 10K, I thought I'd arrived. No more early runs, no more sweaty effort. Big mistake. I gained back the weight I'd lost, and my stamina tanked. It's not just me. My friend Priya, the bakery queen, nearly lost her spark too. She'd built her dream, but once the buzz faded, she stopped tweaking recipes, stopped chatting up customers. I got lazy, she admitted over coffee. Success doesn't stick unless you tend it. How do you hold it? Start with rituals, small, steady anchors. I got back to running twice a week, not for medals, but to feel that hum in my legs. Priya set a rule. 1 new pastry a month. No excuses. Research backs this. Habits beat willpower for the long haul. Pick one thing from your victory. A workout, a work ethic, a morning quiet, and make it non-negotiable. It's not sexy, it's solid. My Uncle Pete, the car guy, still tinkers every Saturday, even with his ride purring. Keeps me sharp, he says. That's the trick. Don't just win, stay in the game. Complacency's a cozy trap. Soft, warm, and deadly. It whispers, you've done enough, and suddenly you're stuck. I felt it after my first big writing gig landed. I'd hustled for it, but once the check cleared, I slacked, missed deadlines, skimped on edits. My editor's polite, where's the draft? Emails woke me up. Same with my cousin Jen. She quit smoking, then started sneaking puffs, thinking I've got this beat. We're human. We drift. To dodge it, keep a pulse on yourself. Ask, am I still pushing or just gliding? I started tracking my writing days. Nothing fancy, just check marks on a calendar. Seeing blanks jolted me back. Jen taped a photo of her smoke-free self to her fridge, a reminder of why she fought. Studies call this self-monitoring. It's like a mirror for your effort. And when you catch the drift, jump back in with something small. 10 words, 1 run, a quick no to the cigarette. Complacency hates motion. Give it none. Here's the real kicker. Greatness isn't a finish line. It moves. That 10K was my summit once, but now I'm eyeing a half marathon. Pri is dreaming of a second bakery. Pete's sketching a boat to build. Success isn't the end. It's a launch pad. But redefining it takes guts. Letting go of what worked to chase what's next. I clung to running as my thing until writing pulled harder. Letting one peak fade for another felt scary, but alive. How do you find the next horizon? Reflect. What's stirring you now? Maybe it's not the goal you had at 20 good. My mom ditched her perfect mom script at 55 for Spanish lessons and messy paintbrushes. I'm not done growing, she grinned. List 3 things that spark you today, big, small, wild. Pick one and poke at it. A class, a Google search, a first step. Greatness evolves because you do. Don't lock it in yesterday's frame. Sustaining success and redefining it isn't tidy. I still skip runs. Priya burns scones. Jen stumbles. But we keep going because the summit's not the point. The climb is. Think of my grandpa, strumming his guitar at 65, off-key but beaming. Next song's better. He'd wink. That's the human touch. Not resting on the win, but reaching for the next note. So, try this. Pick one ritual to lock in your victory. 5 minutes a day, whatever it is. Watch for complacency. Mark your effort somewhere. Then dream a little. What's your next horizon? Write it down, even if it's shaky. I'm still that sweaty 10K guy at heart, just with bigger hills to climb. You've summited once. You can do it again and again in your own wild way. The view's worth it. Conclusion. Your quest starts now. You've walked this path with me, through the battles within, the forging of your warrior's mindset, the taming of habits and emotions, all the way to summits and beyond. From my Oreo stuffed stumbles to that sweaty 10K finish line, I've laid it bare. Conquering yourself isn't a one-and-done deal. It's a daily, human, glorious fight. One you're ready for. Every small victory, every ally you lean on, every horizon you chase. It's all building a you that's tougher, braver, and more alive than you ever imagined. But here's the truth. This ebook isn't the end. It's the spark. The real magic happens when you close these pages and step into your own story. So, don't just read this, live it. Start today. Pick one thing from these chapters. 5 minutes of discipline, a boundary with an adversary, a wild new goal, and do it. Then come back. Share your wins, your stumbles, your messy human moments with me and everyone else on this journey. Subscribe to my updates. You'll find the link at the end, not just for more tips, but because I'm rooting for you and I want to hear how you're rewriting your greatness. Spread the word if this lit something in you. Tell a friend, post it, keep the fire going. One question to chew on. What's the one small victory you'll claim today to kickstart your quest? Drop it in the comments below. I'm all ears, and so is this crew of dream chasers. You've got the tools, the map, the heart. Now go conquer yourself. The world's waiting.